Morning, Justin. How you doing? Top of the morning, Dex. Top of the morning, Dex. How's my new Satoshi hat? Pretty cool, huh? Morning, CK. What's up, man? Morning, Bud. Just letting everyone roll in. I was a little slow. Yo, what's up, Piper Bitcoinization? Morning, Helios. All right. Well, the bright sunny day news. The bright sunny day news is the sun is up. Bitcoin is running. We can have our coffee and talk about all the news. And there is so much news. Some of it funny, some of it great. I can't really see many bad things in the news today. We're going to go over it. I see things turning up our way. First thing is the Techno King himself this morning tweeted, Bitcoin will make it, but will be a long winter. Elon Musk this morning. Bitcoin will make it, but will be a long winter. He was responding to Jason Calacanis talking about the price and just what it means and where it's going. And Elon responded, good news. In funny news, right? We like our funny news. We love our funny news, right? So we're the official Fetterman for President channel. I think I'm the first YouTube channel to declare that I am a full-on Fetterman for President supporter, Fetterman for President for life, Fetterman for President at least 8 years, right? We love Fetterman. I don't mind a Biden 2, but a Fetterman 8 would be great, right? So it's not just me, though. It's not just me. The New York Times is coming out and saying that Democrats see a blueprint for Fetterman victory in Pennsylvania. So the New York Times sort of agreeing with me here. But let's go further, right? We're tracking other Fetterman supporters for president. We mentioned yesterday people talking about it. Well, now MSNBC, Katie Turek came out this morning. She's got a feeling, or yesterday, that he could be in the mix, in the conversation for president. Nothing would make me happier, right? Nothing would make me happier. The old dementia guy being the spokesperson for the dollar is good. It's good, right? Orange guy for the dollar was good. The new guy's much better, right? The new guy's much better. But Fetterman would be the greatest president I think Bitcoiners could ever hope for the United States. It would suck for Americans, but for us, it's amazing, right? Like if we get this guy in office and he's going on about stuff and trying to lead America, well, we got a winner, right? So let's keep it up. So we're going to be talking a lot about NBC and that was an MSNBC clip, Katie Turek supporting it. But we've also got Jim Cramer, right? Another NBC talent, right? Jim Cramer, another NBC talent. So we know the inverse Cramer rule, right? If you don't know the inverse Cramer rule, basically Jim Cramer's been on TV forever, right? And there's a lot of people out there who just believe you do the opposite of Cramer and you'll win, right? You do the opposite of him and you'll be fine. And it's unbelievable how often he pins tops and bottoms to market, but he has it backwards. Like it's unreal, right? How often it happens. So inverse Cramer is a pretty good strategy. And just look right now, the recent inverse Cramer stuff, right? So just 2 weeks ago, he admitted he was wrong about Facebook and Meta and their $100 billion. I guess the stock buybacks are 50, 60 billion now, but we don't know, right? The amount of value that's been lost, how much money they've spent buying back. So we're not really sure about it all in typical Wall Street fashion. I'm sure someone has a better insight into it than I do. I've just seen some estimations, but it looks like they spent a huge war chest buying back stock and then the stock collapsed. So the money's just gone, right? It's evaporated, lost. So he apologized. He said, I was wrong with Meta, right? He hasn't apologized for this one yet, but he recently, and it's been making the rounds, all the things he got wrong about FTX and SBF and all these guys. And of course, he called SBF the new JP Morgan the other day. And he's the new JP Morgan, right? And remember, just about not even a week ago when all this trouble started with SBF, here's what he said, right? Jim Cramer came out and said, at what point is a bet on Bitcoin a bet on SBF's balance sheet? So he tied Bitcoin to SBF's balance sheet and agreed. We found out that it was in fact the same thing, right? according to him, right? According to him. Now he's weighing in with Elon Musk about who should be Twitter's new CEO. So he tweeted at Elon this morning telling him who he thinks the CEO of Twitter should be to help him, right? So obviously, Elon did respond and said, no. Now, when we look at these, how wrong Jim Cramer's got it, right? And we just look at everything in the news today. Here's another incredible one, right? NBC again, right? NBC again. Here's a headline from NBC just yesterday. Myocarditis after COVID vaccination. Pfizer and Moderna are tracking adverse health effects, if any, that may appear in the years following a diagnosis of a vaccine-associated heart problems. And Aaron McIntyre responded to that with the following statement. The difference between a right-wing conspiracy theory and an MSM headline is about 6 months. It's pretty good, huh? It's true. It's about 6 months now. Like, you're crazy. 6 months later, well, it's kind of what we're talking about here. I don't know. So it's a 6 month delay. But what it ends up providing for me anyway is this frame that if you judge the mood of the country right now, either left or right, or even forget the political frame, just your average American, right? You're just your average American. What they're looking out when they look out their window right now, or they turn on their TV, or they pick up their iPhone, is more or less everything's a lie, right? Everything's a lie. And that's a little bit of the mood that people are feeling. They're looking at finance and they're saying, oh, it's a lie, right? With SPF. They're looking at the vaccine stuff and COVID, and now even NBC is saying it, right? This was something that would get you kicked off social media just a few months ago. And now NBC is saying, well, maybe, right? So the idea that you've got these systems that are being questioned and people are saying, well, they're not really producing results that would help anyone, makes me think of a major advantage that Bitcoiners have when it comes to our worldview and how we see things and how we put things together and how we see them interact. And it involves the media and it involves how we think of financial systems, right? So I built a data tool when I was at CoinDesk. And the data tool was I called it market interest. And it was supposed to be a tool that we could use to get over the market cap as a data point for the crypto industry. And the tool that I built was started from the design principle that Bitcoin already behaves as a reserve asset. It already behaves as a benchmark for the crypto industry. So this is sort of like sub 10K Bitcoin where I'm thinking about this stuff and all that. And what I understood from the time and what I still believe is the following. We think of the word crypto economics, right? Crypto economics. And it sounds like a made-up word. It sounds like it's got some engineering, financial engineering stuff involved, right? It sounds like it's a brand new economics term, and you have to be able to understand this new economics term and understand the whatever configurations of this new economic term in order to understand crypto economics. Well, it turns out absolutely not, right? Crypto economics is the following. It's economics like you and I have always known. It's choices, right? Incentives, choices, the choices humans make every day. The difference is crypto economics are actually not a subcategory of economics at all. They have nothing to do with economics, right? It's economics as we know it, but as a subcategory of engineering, right? It's a subcategory of engineering. Systems design and crypto economics being an element of systems design is really just about how systems grow through incentive mechanisms. So the reason I built the tool the way I did was I admitted that the only real crypto economic force in the world is Bitcoin. And if you want to gauge anything else that is crypto economics, any other data point is useless. You have to measure it by Bitcoin. So what I did was I created a numeraire system for Bitcoin on, I think, about 50 different data points. Some were simple, this was price, right? So I took price, right? Price is a part of the crypto economic incentive system. So I said there's price, right? And then I said, well, there's exchange activity, right? So exchange activity would be number of trade pairs, volume, all those kinds of things, number of exchanges that it's on, right? All these things. And of course, in every one of these metrics, Bitcoin is the top. So it becomes very easy to measure everything else relative to Bitcoin to give it some sense. What does 12 trade pairs of a coin mean? Well, I don't know, right? But if I know that Bitcoin has 100 and another coin only has 12, well, then relative to Bitcoin, it's like, 12% is good. And then I said, well, social is another, right? So this would be like trade venues, all kinds of things. I just weighted everything sort of to my best guess. I gave, 5%. Let's say I gave 20% to every one of these things, right? But on each axis, this is a radar graph, by the way. So each of them has measurements. So this was all kinds of things I could think about for exchanges. Here, this was social activity, right? So that would be number of number of social media followers. At the time, we had to use the Bitcoin Reddit, and it was a bit confusing. So we had to use another one. Number of mentions on Twitter, number of meetups, number of Facebook posts, those kinds of things. You just take all the data and compare it again, right? Then this one here is network activity. So that would be number of wallets, anything on-chain, hash rate, any data point that would refer to the actual performance of the chain itself. So hash rate, all those things, right? Even the cost of transactions I had there as a good thing, not a good thing, but at least measured against. So Bitcoin's on-chain fees would denote basically interest and a desire to use the chain, and then you would measure that against others. Finally, this one here was like a developer activity. So GitHub activity measured across all kinds of different things. A little easy to spoof in the sense that you can buy stars, you could buy all this stuff. Anyway, the point is I was trying to measure interest, right? The whole thing turned into a measurement of interest of one chain and another. So it's not a market cap, it's a market interest. How interested are people in using this thing, and will it grow organically according to the forces of crypto economics as measured by Bitcoin, which is the measuring stick for a healthy growth pattern of crypto economics. And it ended up being pretty interesting. We got some pretty cool results. For example, what I drew here was more or less what Bitcoin Cash looked like at the time. It looked like a social attack because you could immediately tell that proportionately it had more social activity than it did anything else. So you could tell right away what a shitcoin looked like, right? You could understand immediately that if it's all gathering in the social vector and there's nothing happening on chain, there's nothing really happening in exchanges, there's nothing happening on the developer level, well, it's just a shitcoin, right? So the idea was that we could use Bitcoin to just understand everything else in the market and understand it relative to Bitcoin, not relative to the dollars, not relative to any of the other stuff the technical analysts are looking at today. We were trying to look at a holistic view of engineering and system design as it went forward, right? So Bitcoiners have this engineering outlook already. They've gone further on the engineering side than just economics and finance. They've gone really into systems and how you design them and how you make them work. So Bitcoiners already have a great basis for understanding that systems work much better than just average goals and things you say it will do, right? But what we don't have now is anyone else sort of seeing it that way, right? So in the mainstream media anyway, right? People in our industry understand that, but here's the kind of stuff we're looking at today, right? So we understand as Bitcoiners, this was a difference in systems. When we look at FTX immediately, we understand that this is not a crypto economic system at all. It did nothing. There would be no way to measure FTX's activity in any of these ways, right? A little bit of exchange activity, but there's nothing decentralized, right? There was some social, but it would have projected as a shitcoin according to this systems analysis, right? And now if you look in the news, you're going to find a bunch of people just equating it all to the same thing, right? So you've got, and this is disgusting. This is what I'm about to show you or explain to you is vile and disgusting. The Financial Times has an article today where they talk about, so first of all, you got to see the picture. I'll try to show it to you. It's fucking disgusting. Look at this picture. There's CZ. You see his fat head? You see the fat head they gave CZ? All right, this is what they say. CZ's actions left Bankman-Fried's FTX filing for bankruptcy. They're basically blaming it on CZ in this article, right? The Financial Times saying, "Oh, CZ was too aggressive and all these other things," right? He's sort of the villain here, right? So the Financial Times just recently coming out and saying he's kind of the villain, right? He's kind of the villain, which is, I mean, absurd, right? Absurd on so many levels. And you get the entire media infrastructure that's sitting there telling you that, here's another article by Fortune. Crypto's nature is revealed by downfall of Sam Bankman-Fried's FTX, right? And so Raphael Schoen says, the same media company that put SBF on their cover as the next Warren Buffett are now realizing that crypto may not be as legit as they thought, right? You can't, it's absurd, right? They promoted him. Bitcoiners didn't promote him. Bitcoiners didn't say, oh, this guy's great and let's embrace him. I think everyone knew, everyone who was close enough, right? You didn't even have to be that close to understand that there was something wrong here, right? Now it turns out that they only had like one Bitcoin on their balance sheet to begin with, and they were selling actual fake Bitcoin to people, right? Fake Bitcoin. They didn't even have it. They were just giving you this claim to fake Bitcoin that they never bought. They never had it. They never owned it. You never even had any sort of association with it, right? They had, I think in the end, they dug deep and found 1.1 Bitcoins in the entire balance sheet of FTX in the end, right? So already when you're thinking of systems, it doesn't match, right? It doesn't match. Muslim Bitcoin or crypto economics. So a lot of it has to be whether the crypto is proof of work or proof of stake, right? Because that will change the basis of the crypto. Yeah, it will. And I only benchmark against proof of work. If you're a proof of stake, you just lose all those points, 100%. So in my model here, hash rate and wallet use was basically the most important thing. And Bitcoin's hash rate was so much higher than any other chain that you barely ever got a reading on other chains compared to that. I thought about tweaking it a little bit and taking down the weight of hash rate, but there was no point. Like even Ethereum had trouble showing up at all there, right? Ethereum looked healthy from this point of view where there was a lot of developers on it. It looked healthy from this point of view where there was a lot of exchanges. Price was fine. It just was weakly decentralized, according to my model, which I think is an accurate way of describing what's going on. So yeah, in my model, I use hash rate definitively and not. I thought about building other indices that would take it away to measure proof of stake against themselves, and maybe even making like Ethereum a numeraire amongst its own cohort, but I never developed it that far. By the way, if you ever want to see this stuff animated, on my YouTube, some of the first videos I ever posted, I did one for the 10-year of Bitcoin. I did Bitcoin against itself. So I took a couple of all-time highs of Bitcoin and I used those as a numeraire. And I measured all growth from the start according to that. And I usually plug headlines into these so that you get a sense of the news going at the same time. And it will animate over like 2 minutes. And you'll see things happening, things hitting the news, and then activity happening. Like one of the most remarkable things in Bitcoin you can see when you use this model that I created is the Silk Road shutdown, where you just watch network usage implode in Bitcoin overnight, really. A few things come later to take its place, but it takes a long time to recover from the Silk Road seizure. And on-chain in particular, you see it. You see it in the model. It's amazing to watch. Is FBF a Trojan horse for crypto regulations? Well, I'm going to get there. Yeah, I'm a BTC maxi. Just curious. I'm getting there right now. So, and once again, we're going to stay on our theme of NBC and systems. So immediately, right now that everyone's complaining about FTX and everyone's going on and crying and they're so bad, and they're terrible, right? But as I mentioned, the media already pulling this shit where it's like, what about CZ? What a weird angle to take in the first place, right? To even implicate CZ in any of this stuff and responsibility. Then you get this Fortune article, right? That he's sort of suggested the downfall of the industry. Well, here's another from Ted Kemp, another CNBC fella, right? Here's our theme, CNBC. Crypto was supposed to bring transparency. Transactions on the blockchain could all be tracked. We didn't need banks because we had digital ledgers to serve as the single source of truth. That narrative is gone. Ted Kemp, CNBC, right? So again, they're confusing the systems here, and no Bitcoiner would recognize anything to do with crypto economics or decentralization or any of the things that we understand in Bitcoin are at all recognizable in the FTX situation. But here they're conflating them, right? Now, one way to understand this is the concept of decoy dichotomies. Decoy dichotomies, right? We're gonna go through decoy dichotomies today. It's a really important subject. And a decoy dichotomy looks like this, right? TikTok is the best example of a decoy dichotomy, right? So whenever you hear mainstream news pieces on the corruption and Chinese influence in TikTok today, they do a very sneaky and dangerous thing. And I want you to watch out for it because it will help you, right? And almost anything. Now that I've explained decoy dichotomies to you and what they do in the media, you're going to see them everywhere. Here's a great example. Any story you see about TikTok focuses on data leakage. Oh, China has access to the data. They're going to get your personal information. What are you going to do? Oh my goodness, it's so bad, right? And all that might be true, right? And I guess it is bad or whatever, right? People are worried about TikTok and data and China and these things. But that is entirely a decoy dichotomy. It's fake. What you have to worry about with TikTok is they use decoy dichotomies to push a whole nother narrative, right? What you need to be worried about with TikTok are things like influencing people, right? It has nothing to do with your information. The influence is way more important, right? That's civilizational ending. If TikTok is able to divert people's opinions, people's attention to other things, right? If they can divert everyone's attention during an election to abortion or whatever else, and not fentanyl. I mean, how many fentanyl stories are going around TikTok these days? Are people doing like fentanyl dances on TikTok? I don't think they are, right? Even if they did, it wouldn't go anywhere. Right? It's finished, right? Whatever gets through to the consumer on TikTok is by design, right? It's intended to get through to them. And that algorithm can be tricked anytime. Now, whether or not China did that to American elections isn't the point. It can be done. It doesn't matter if they did it. You have to assume, if there's a 1% chance they did it, you have to assume it's 100% they did, because the damage is so great, right? We talk about all these people trying to influence American elections. Well, TikTok, everyone says now, had a big influence on Gen Z, get out the vote, all this kind of stuff, right? But what are they actually seeing on TikTok? Well, right, it's not for us to say, right? So the story of data security has nothing to do with any, who cares, right? TikTok and data security is a decoy. It's not the real story, right? Now, we see the decoy dichotomy playing out every day when it comes to FTX and all this stuff. So you get Francis Coppola arguing today that we need regulation, right? So Balaji says, Sam Bankman-Fried stole money from investors to bribe the establishment to pass regulations, right? So obviously don't pass the law that he's promoting, which is where we're at, right? We see the CFTC talking about pushing through with the consumer protection bill that Sam designed himself, right? Which had nothing to do with decentralization, right? You've got, all of these folks now calling for regulation of crypto, and particularly the regulation that SBF put forward, right? You've even got Elon Musk today pointing to the connections between Gary Gensler, between CFTC, SBF, and other people in the group, right? I think Elon even joined a Twitter group last night to talk about the situation, and I think he even told about the time he knew he had met SBF, right? You get Edward Snowden, right? Edward Snowden today mentioning this as well, right? Fortune again. The FTX debacle makes SEC Chair Gensler look bad again, right? So Snowden, right, tweets, the White House sanctions and arrests kids for the crime of building privacy tools to protect you, while regulators were quietly palling around with the thieves who just robbed 5 million people. The difference, the thieves were big political donors. So everyone now talking about FTX's collusion, potential collusion, right, with CFTC and SEC. Now, on our show, we covered the coincidence. It was a coincidence, right? I don't have any proof, total coincidence, but I'll mention it again, that the 2020 election in the United States, which I acknowledged the winner of immediately and have no proof of any fraud or anything like that. I have no proof at all whatsoever. All I did was see in the days after the 2020 election, when it was really confusing and no one knew what was going on and everyone was saying, what's up with this, what's up with that, there was a data point referenced regularly, and it was the FTX prediction markets for elections. Now, I knew about this because when I was working at Kraken at the time, I told them to build a similar thing because I anticipated a hung election and a data point that would be relevant, which was election prediction markets. And I said, you might get amplification, right? And boy, did they get amplification. No one had ever heard of FTX until all of a sudden this data point was being broadcast all around the world, right? What do they say? What do they say? Now, I knew I had already made a presentation on it in Kraken weeks before the election saying no one's trading this thing. The volume is super low. I kept my eyes on the volume. It never went up. I said, we can have the most important elections market within 2 days if we reach our audience at Kraken, which was much larger, right? We had a much larger consumer base in 2020 than FTX, and especially an American consumer base. So we were able to attract those people easily. They technically were not allowed to offer services in America, although they did and understood they did, right? The only thing I ever, let's say, respected about FTX's business model in the early days when I'd be talking about it, because I was looking at it really closely, the only thing I respected was they knew their users could use VPNs. So they understood that there was an American market, even though they didn't have regulation to work in America. And I thought that was clever, right? I thought that was clever. They never even bothered trying to get a regulatory foothold in America. And I thought, that was clever of them. And had everything else been built properly, that would still be a clever choice. But obviously, everything that was built was stupid. So I knew that this election market was thin, very thin, and could be beaten from a competition point of view. So election comes, no one knows what to talk about. It's just a bunch of lawyers and stupid people fighting on TV for days, and we don't know. But the one data point they keep going to on every single network is the FTX prediction market. They go back to it and back to it and back to it. And at the time, I'm losing it because I'm saying this was a massive win for the company, and we could have had our brand on every single news broadcast at this time, right? So it kept happening, and the market remained thin, right? It was not really heavily traded. And when it broke to Biden, it was heavily reported, right? It was seen as confirmation by the non-sentimental people. Every story was delivered the same, right? Well, the Wall Street people and the people who bet don't care. They're not political. They're not on one side or the other, right? But I knew what SBF had done, right? I knew what he had done, and I knew he was a big political donor, and I knew that why wouldn't he put his finger on the scale? Why wouldn't he? Right? Could he be caught? No, there was no way to catch this stupid market with no volume. It would have cost not a lot of money to push it in one direction, not a lot of money, right? And it happened, and then you had a bunch of people cite it, and other things happened, right? So, I mean, the vote counts came, and Biden won and was declared winner, and I acknowledge the win, and I'm not here to tell you he didn't win, right? I'm not here to tell you he didn't win. I accepted it, immediately accepted it, right? My thought at the time already was, well, if cheating is inherent, you got to cheat better, right? But I don't know if it's cheating, right? I don't know, right? But I acknowledged it. That was the win. Go for it. Good, right? But now more stuff is coming out, right? So we knew all of that. CFTC banned prediction election markets just before this election, no excuse given. All of this happening at the same time that the Consumer Protection Bill was being discussed with the CFTC, right? So, and influence was increasing with the checks, right? More money. It was $3.5 million in 2020. It had come to, some say 30, 40, 50. I've seen all kinds of numbers out there. I don't know what the real number is. So it's a tie, I guess. But here's the thing that everyone else is charting right now, right? This is from Majid Nawaz, who we love, right? Evidence for Ukraine laundering of US donations from US government and back to the Democrat Party via FTX is getting stronger. These young crypto guys have been investigating. They had verified whistleblowers. Elon Musk dropped into the live chat too. So this is from Mario Nawfal, right? So Mario Nawfal is the guy that Majid is discussing here, his work, the crypto guys that have been investigating. And Mario says, we just made history. We turned one of the worst events in crypto into a time where we all come together, despite threats, despite 30 to 40 hours of no sleep, despite whistleblower intimidations. Crypto citizen journalism made its mark before any press. Thanks, Elon Musk, for dropping by, right? So these guys are now charting money between the party and between FTX and Ukraine, right? So, you know, and if you listen to the Glenn Greenwald worldview, right, this is not, well, I guess I do agree with the worldview, but I don't have proof of it. So I'm just going to repeat the Glenn Greenwald worldview and leave it in his hands, right? Because I can't argue for it as well as he does. But his worldview always was that the reason why America was so long in Afghanistan was because it was excellent for money laundering, right? This is the Julian Assange worldview, that Julian Assange and Ed Snowden and what's his name, Glenn Greenwald, all saw the Afghan war as a perpetual war in order to money launder for the US war machine and all these other things. And when that was all closed down, when Syria and Iraq and Afghanistan were closed down, a new venue for this kind of activity was needed. And Glenn Greenwald and these folks have been saying that Ukraine was chosen for this reason, right? So to me, it looks legit. I'm not an investigative journalist on what is going on with America in Ukraine. I'm still of the belief, and I'll say even to Glenn Greenwald or anyone on the show, any bit of data you get out of Ukraine is false, or at least spun. You can't trust anything, right? So it might be true, but I just wouldn't trust anything from any side, especially if it's so on the nose that it makes sense to you in that moment because it confirms some bias you have. So all I'm saying is this confirms all of my biases. So don't use me as a source on what's going on in Ukraine almost ever, right? I follow it and all that stuff, and I'll add it for context, but I am not here as a primary source for what is happening in Ukraine. I don't know, right? I don't trust, just like I'm not a primary source on vaccine anything, right? Not like, I'll talk about it, but I don't know anything, right? But what I do know is persuasion. So that's why we're talking about persuasion, right? And here's what it comes down to, right? So now we have this look at elections. We have a look at what's going on in Ukraine, finance, election finance. Well, here's another part of systems design that's really important, right? So we think in terms of systems, right? We think in terms of crypto economic health. A Bitcoiner can tell the difference between a Bitcoin system, a decentralized system, and not, right? We can tell the difference. We know what the qualities are. We think in terms of engineering. We want a financial system that is based purely on engineering, not by the confluence of aircraft carriers and political will and some weird banking thing, right? We want an actual engineered system built with the thought and design of an engineer in order to run our financial system, right? That's crypto economic design. And Bitcoin is the measuring stick, is the perfect example of it actually working. Probably the only proof that crypto economics really exists, right? It's probably the only proof that it exists because everything else is not quite as healthy and needs help in one way or the other, right? Bitcoin could do it, almost without any other crypto coin exchanging, right? It can do it with fiat, it can do it with anything, right? It doesn't need a pure crypto ecosystem to be measured. It can measure itself by itself, right? Because we know what happened. Bitcoin did grow. It is like an organism, and we can measure the health of that organism based on the inputs and outputs, right? And that's the engineering lens to look at Bitcoin. But when you think of public blockchains, right? So I put this up here because we're going to be talking about elections next, and the design principles of elections are very similar to those of blockchains, right? So this is called Zuko's triangle, right? Zuko, the actual Zuko, right? The Zcash Zuko invented this. So you know that Zuko was on the original mailing list that Satoshi sent out, right? So he's one of the first people to be in dialogue with Satoshi. And Zuko was a cryptographer before that already, thinking about all of these systems, privacy, and what goes into them. So this is an actual cryptographic system, an actual piece of system design that is looked at as useful to not cryptocurrency, the world of cryptography, right? So Zuko built something that actually is useful for cryptographers around the world. And it's called Zuko's triangle, and it's a trade-off situation, right? Where a system can be human readable, decentralized, and safe, but it has to give up one bit of the other in order to get strength in some way, right? So it's all trade-offs. So when you're designing these systems, you make trade-offs. These are actual design choices, right? They're design choices. And if you give up a bit of human readability, right, and you want to make it more secure, then you can do that, right? But if you want human readability, then you've got to give up a bit of security, right? So I mention all of this. Because everyone in America is still looking at the Arizona elections, right? What's going on in Arizona? They still haven't finished counting. It's a week now, right? There's, 7 million people in the state of Arizona, right? It's like 1/3 of Florida, and Florida was over that night. So what the heck is going on there? Well, here's what's going on. In Arizona, they made design choices, right? And it's not a Republican Democrat thing, even though the Democrat candidate in the election, right, was the former Secretary of State, or the current Secretary of State of Arizona. So she's in charge of the elections, right? So she's actually, one of the candidates is also in charge of the elections, right? Just so you know, right? Someone said it was okay, so I guess it's okay, right? I don't know anything about it, but she is, right? So, but she's not the only one who designed the system, right? This was designed by Republicans too. So this is not a Democrat corrupted it, Republican corrupted it. This is a systemic problem, right? The Arizona situation is different. And the reason it's different is they made design choices, right? They made design choices. They chose systems. And what they chose was something that was, let's say, a little more usable. They went hard on the human readability. So they basically said, every idiot who can't find a way to get ID can write one of these mail-in ballots or these whatever ballots, and they'll be counted days later, right? So they gave up security. So the secure system, if you bring an engineer in to look at election system, right? If you just took any engineer, 100 engineers, and brought them into a room and said, look at these election systems, these are your choices, right? The secure one is the least, and Bitcoiners think in terms of adversarial attacks and all these things, right? These are the systems we think about all the time. So you could make it more secure, like Israel, right? In Israel, what they do is you get 1 day, you come in the room, you sign your thing, and you put it in a box, and it's finished. No one touches the ballot. No one does anything like that. There's people in the room from all sides who are making sure you're not harassed or whatever, but it's done. Now, the human readability or convenience of it for human beings is very low, but the security is very high, right? They made a choice, right? And if that was your choice, right, if that's what they wanted in Arizona, they would have had it, right? If they wanted secure, they would have had it. What they wanted was ease of use, right? They wanted ease of voting. That was a design choice, right? They decided to embrace a system that had less security and in the end, way less decentralization, right? In order to be easy, right? So that was a design choice. Now, what does easy mean? Well, I mean, they want it to be easy for anyone to vote and in any way they want. That has costs when it comes to decentralization that are clear, and it has costs to security, which are clear, but they chose it, right? They chose the system. But here's where it gets amazing, and this is where you get into the decoy, where you get into the confusion, right? Glenn Greenwald reminds us that just years ago, right? And the point of this is to show how quickly people's minds can be changed through persuasion. And this should be chilling, right? This is scary stuff. So this is a New York Times video from 2016, and Glenn Greenwald is commenting on it. So watch this video and marvel at how easy it is to train part of the American population, the super enlightened liberal class, to believe that what was always unthinkable and unacceptable is in fact totally normal and has always been. Right, so he's referring to the video in the New York Times on how it was crazy to have the results of an election not on the day of the election, and they were referring back to the 2000 election with Gore and Bush, right? 6 years later, they have conditioned Americans to believe that winners can't be determined on election day. And here's what he says, right? Is it at all strange that a brand new and opaque voting system was implemented in the name of COVID? People are trained to think it's normal to take not days, but weeks to count votes. And candidates are required to concede when the media says so, not when the votes are counted. I'm not stating or implying there's fraud in this election. I've seen no evidence. I've seen no evidence of fraud. I think even what's going on in Arizona, there's so many eyes on it that I don't know. I can't imagine fraud getting through, but systems, right? Systems. So just like Glenn, I'm not stating any evidence of it, right? But when the planet's richest country purposefully implements a voting system that takes weeks to count votes and votes appear from all corners, of course, that will foster rational distrust. So the system that they chose in Arizona was not designed for confidence in the result at all. It was designed for ease of voting, right? That was a choice, right? It is Zuko's trilemma, and they chose ease, human readability. They chose that, right? They chose it. So the most surreal part of this is that people who claim to embody democracy, who tell you that the only way to save democracy is to vote how they tell you, are the ones who defend this. Anyone asking questions about why this takes so long and is so chaotic is somehow anti-democracy, right? Well, that's systems, right? That's systems design, right? So we can tell the difference as Bitcoiners between systems design as an engineering principle. We have an engineering frame for the world more than this expert class, and are you a Fed chair member, or did you get an economics degree, or do you have a Series 7 Wall Street license, or, you know, just look at all of the failures. And here's the good news. This is why the FTX break is so good, right? Look who's losing money. It's, you know, endowments. It's institutional money. It's VCs. We're not here to make VCs richer. If they lost their money on this, so be it, right? That's the transfer of wealth we always hear about. The transfer of wealth is not they just give us their money in their will, right? Their stupidity gets destroyed, right? They get taken advantage of because they don't know what's going on in the world. And that's what happened, right? They all did the diligence together. Everyone's read the Sequoia letter, right? The Sequoia letter on SBF and FTX. Oh, give them all the money they want. This is the first trillionaire in the world, they call them, the first trillionaire, right? That's what they thought. That's how impressed they were with him. That's the kind of failures we saw in smart money, not understanding what was going on. To this day, I think we're fine because I don't think any Bitcoiner would have lost any money to this catastrophe, right? We find out now they've only got 1.1 Bitcoins on their entire balance sheet. They were not even close to Bitcoiners, not even close, right? So we're able to now get the contrast we needed from crypto. The contrast of Bitcoiners and crypto is going to be accelerated from what happened with FTX. We will not fall into some myopic, blurred lines between some casino exchange and Bitcoin, right? There's going to be people who try and force us there, but the world is changing really quickly. And we're understanding these systems more and more. And here's the best example I've seen. Here's the best example I've seen. Remember we talked a while ago about Kanye and his personal trainer? Remember his personal trainer, Harley Pasternak? Remember this guy? Harley Pasternak's the guy who said he's a trainer. Imagine your trainer talking to you this way. The second option is, this is him again. We talked about this the other day on the show, but I got to read it again because I've never heard a human speak like this in my life, right? And we got to talk about it, right? So he comes out and says, second option, this is the trainer to Kanye West. Yay. I have you institutionalized again where they medicate the crap out of you and you go back to zombie land forever. Playdate with the kids just won't be the same. So Tucker Carlson. So I, to the best of my ability, when I first read this, did some diligence, right? I knew the thing in Canada existed. That was about as much as I could do. I couldn't get into names and all that stuff. But Tucker's gone out and done a bit. Tucker had this on the story the other day, right? So Here's what here's what Ye said. Here's what Ye said the night before he was originally institutionalized and medicated by Harley Pasternak. This is now Tucker Carlson's investigations, right? Here's what he said. He was in a concert and Ye got up on stage. Obviously, it's a concert. There's people all around. And he says, Facebook lied to you. I'm not here to massage you with the fake truth, telling you that Hillary's going to win over and over and over. You were lied to by Google. You were lied to by Mark Zuckerberg. And he started to talk about Trump and how much he likes him and da-da-da-da-da, right? Next day, psychotic episode, right? Now, if we're thinking of systems, right? If we're thinking in terms of systems, if what Ye said is true, right? That there are people trying to keep him on script, this is what it looks like. If you're thinking in terms of systems, I still don't have any proof of it. I have only what investigations Tucker's done, and he hasn't done that much. He just gave time. There's been no denials by Pasternak. There have been no denials by anyone involved that this happened, that this is real, and that it's ongoing. There's been no denials that Pasternak had the military experience, which we know. We've seen video of him describing that he was able, because he didn't work under the purview of the Canadian government, was able to experiment more with drug and mind control. So those are exact words from his mouth, right? So he was able to experiment more with that stuff. And now we think about all of these things, right? System design, and so here's my conclusion about it all, right? Here's my conclusion about it all. We got FTX, which is showing us that it's a complete lie in finance, right? We've got the vaccine story again, right? Which is making it look like lies all over media, the checks and balances in academia and science and all of these things, right? But good thing, good thing, our elections are secure, right? That's the one system that hasn't broken down. That's great news, right? We're in great shape. Everything else is broken that we can look at. When we look outside, everything, literally everything is broken, except elections. So if you want, we got Thanksgiving coming up in America, or even if there's one of these, crypto bros trying to come to you to give you shit about Bitcoin and FTX, just tell them this, well, the FTX shows them the thing's broken, right? It's broken. The vaccines, it's a big fight, but geez, I'm just happy. I'm just so happy. Like, a lot of stuff breaking. I'm just so happy that elections are secure and we chose good systems. And it doesn't matter, right? Because God forbid there's interference. God forbid, right? God forbid someone like Kanye can talk about elections to his audience, right? I mean, he got away with it, kind of, right? He said the words, but whatever happened after, maybe it's broken or not, but it looks, I don't know, we're doing okay. So if you want to get them out of your way, right, just say, yeah, crypto's fucked up, man, but a good thing our elections are great. They can't handle it. It breaks their brain. They'll leave. I've been practicing. It works. It works. Yeah, they're great. The elections are great. All right, team. We got Bitcoin pump stream. Yeah, we are the Bitcoin pump stream. And again, my thoughts from the start of this were, this is good for Bitcoin. I mean, it's good. I didn't know how good. It's looking better and better, right? I didn't know how far the rot went with FTX. It's looking pretty bad. And if people are able to on-chain sleuth what's going on in Ukraine, then we might actually be about to crack this nut open the way it needs to be cracked open. And that would be the best thing we could ever see. Going to go back and watch those animations today. Didn't realize yeah, we are pumping today. I saw that, Yeah, they're fun. I mean, it was a concept still, and it never really got market traction the way we were hoping. So that's why not much more got put into it as far as a product goes. I still think it does represent I still think that the natural measurement for economic activity going forward is actually the old one. It's interest, right? So we've lost sight of the word interest, right? We put interest as yield on an asset. I think that's part of it, right? But even proof of reserves, right? Go to the tool of proof of reserves. I put proof of reserves within this system here because in the future, just like in the past, private banking requires you to have a balance sheet and, well, I guess it wouldn't be a balance sheet, but you have to have deposits and you have to be able to signal what you have in order to be able to create maturity transformation and all the other tools that are required to make a financial operation run. And so I've always thought that this interest factor will be akin to yield, right? It's akin to yield. If the interest in your chain, a public chain like an organism, is real and you're able to measure it by Bitcoin, you will have a real thing on your hands and it will have interest and therefore can, generate some economic activity. So I still think, market cap is super dumb. It's just, subcategory of a subcategory, but market interest is more or less going to be the measurement of economic activity going forward on a Bitcoin standard. That's what I believe, right? Once we don't have the obsession with translating dollars to Bitcoin as our number one data point, right? The US dollar conversion rate for Bitcoin. Once we take over, no one cares about that, right? Everything from there is how much Bitcoin do you have? So in an exchange, how much Bitcoin is on the balance sheet, not the 1.1 fucking things, right? But in proof of reserves, what's being shown, right? So right away, you can start to gauge interest in that exchange, right? Because people are using it, they're depositing, why are they depositing? That becomes the most important data point in the industry. If you do this right, the market interest becomes an indicator of what people think about it and how they're using it. And if you measure it in terms of the Bitcoin system, you'll have an even better gauge of what's going on, right? How decentralized is it? How much are people talking about it? How much are people building on it? How much are people using it? All those things, right? So yeah, the one I did on Bitcoin against itself, I still think that's the right way to look at Bitcoin in data terms, right? Against itself. You look at its own growth. And so the tool worked better for Bitcoin measured against itself than it did other things measured against Bitcoin. So that's what I think. All right, team. Ciao. What inning of the will fight? Oh, I don't understand that, bud. What inning of the fight are we in? Oh, what inning of the fight? That's a good question. I'm a little more optimistic than Elon, but let's just go with, honestly, I think the halvings are going to help bring us to the solution. So, and I guess the other piece is, we talk about human capital pulling into the industry, and I've always used that as a predictive model, right? We talked a bit about it yesterday. Yeah, we're at 27 hunger. I love your unique ways of presenting data psychology with achievement. Thank you, Nolan. Thanks, PH. We're at 27 hunger. Yeah, I think the hunger thing is the right, what hyper-Bitcoinization is saying is my actual prediction, but if I'm to put it in time, here's what I think. We enter different fields, and you can see when the human capital peels off and comes into our industry. And that is the most predictive thing for me, or it has been the most predictive thing for me until now. And, I'll do the quick history, right? It's the cryptographers, then it's the political people, right? So the first ones in 08, 09, 2010, cryptographers. Then the political people get involved, right? The libertarians who understand it, but not from an engineering point of view, from a freedom point of view, from a privacy point of view. They're next. Then the Wall Street people enter, right? They're the non-sentimental people. It doesn't really matter. People are trading it. What the fuck is it? I want to trade it too, right? And that's great. We don't need everyone to be sentimental, right? Some sentimental people were built out of that, but they're not as sentimental, right? Which is okay. What I noticed next were the collectible NFT people coming, right? The all of the Pepes and all that stuff. So at CoinDesk, I put a lot of time into building wallets. I thought CoinDesk could be the biggest wallet provider on earth, not for your savings, or I didn't care about any of that stuff. It wasn't supposed to be a secure wallet. We weren't even in that market. It was for giving you coupons. We wanted to give you coupons. Instead of advertising, we thought we could just, you come into CoinDesk, you read the data, you read the news, and then you get to see what sponsors are giving you as coupons. And I was of the mind that all those coupons were going to be NFTs. And so we did productize it. We made it for Consensus, the event, where we gave NFTs away to be exchanged at the booth. So instead of a bag of swag, we would give you a wallet, a branded wallet, and you would get shit given to you in the wallet. And the wallet could be traded at a booth for whatever. It could be traded for a stress ball, a t-shirt, or whatever. And it worked, right? People liked it, and da-da-da. This was sort of really early. This is like 2018, right? This is early NFT days. It hasn't pumped at all, right? I was trying to talk CryptoPunks into giving them away to the attendees at the time, and it was CoinDesk who kiboshed it, right? So imagine they would have given away at the time worthless CryptoPunks, each of which at one point were worth 4 or 5 Bitcoins at the height of the market. So it was anyway. So all I knew was NFT people were coming, art people were coming. That's all I knew. It didn't matter what else, right? I just saw them coming. In the end, they were lost to shitcoins and lost to craziness and lost to all of that. And they have a lot of learning to do and all of that other stuff, but that's not my problem. What I see now, so the point is just to predict what inning we're in and where we're headed, right? What I see now in terms of human migration is the most important migration, I think, for us. So we're only at the beginning of the most important migration, and that's energy, right? We're going to take over the energy industry. I'll take it over. Like, this is ours, right? And this shell deal with Bitcoin Magazine and our show is just the start. They just signed a 2-year sponsorship deal for the show. But in the same way that, we did, like, if you would come to one of the Bitcoin shows over the years, you would see, a heavy focus on engineering, a heavy focus on liberty, a heavy focus on Wall Street stuff, right? That was all there. We have the physical art thing, and I think that is a reaction to the failure of the art scene in the industry, right? They got, caught up in the craziness. Unfortunately, artists don't have the engineering capacity here, right? They're easier to fool, I think, right? You can basically look at all the bad takes on the internet, right? All the cliche bad takes, and if you go into their bio, you're going to find out there's some form of an artist, right? All the really dumb people, right? The really dumb people that say the dumbest shit, that still read Jim Cramer and these folks, right? That's like their exposure to finance, right? These people almost always failed writers or failed artists, or not that I've met a lot of great artists in the industry. There are many, right? I'm totally generalizing right now, totally generalizing. So total generalization, but you see a lot of it, right? So sometimes I just look when people say the dumbest shit, they go around trolling or whatever and all that stuff. You just go, sometimes I want to see who they are. Like honestly, 9 times out of 10, the dumbest people that I feel compelled to go into their bio to look, you'll find out they're an artist. So, artist / working at a coffee shop. Not that there's anything, I've worked at coffee shops, nothing wrong with working at a coffee shop. I had a lot of service industry jobs, in my past. Love that work, right? Love that type of work, and have all the time in the world for waiters, waitresses, coffee shop people, and we'll have long conversations with them all the time. So there you go. So Daniel Renault says bottom of the third. Honestly, it all depends on energy. That's what I think. If we get an announcement about, now we're the trouble in Bitcoin mining finance is the only thing that I'm not worried about, but that's all that I'm considering as far as what inning we're in. So we are behind now. There is a lot of shit that has to get worked out. We're in a way different environment than we were 6 months ago. 6 months ago, I believed I could engineer a headline where a Bitcoin miner buys a nuclear reactor. I don't think I could engineer that headline today. I think I can engineer that headline in the next 2 years, but I can't engineer it today. I wouldn't know where to go I could get like a headline, we're using nuclear energy, but that doesn't move the needle, right? The headline I'm trying to generate at our show is Bitcoin miners buy X amount of nuclear reactors, and we're on the moon if that happens, right? We mooned. Doesn't even matter. If the world starts counting, measuring energy markets in Bitcoin, game over. And I think they will very soon, right? That's the shortcut for us. With BRICS and with this petrodollar and with the complete lack of trust in either of these entities, right? And now, if you guys want to see what's really going on in the world type of thing, right? Just go have a look at Russell Brand's interview with Eckhart Tolle yesterday. Eckhart Tolle is a psychiatrist, psychologist, actually like promoted by Oprah and all this stuff, right? And I thought he had a very great description, and he puts it in the same terms as I do, right? It's either they're so wicked and evil, and all this is so premeditated, and they're so clever that it's a big global conspiracy, right? So it's either that, Eckhart says it's either that, or they're so stupid and dumb that they are as clownish more clownish than you can even imagine. I remain in the clown world view, side of the camp, right? I could be swayed, look, I'm 100% aware of deep occult influence. I know, right? But I still believe the amount of idiots and morons in the world are so high, and it explains the situation. Explains everything that's wrong, right? My worldview, if you make predictions based on everyone's an idiot running these things, you'll get the right result, right? It'll predict well. It's a good frame, right? It continues to be a good frame. And what he says is basically that, right? We are now living in a psychic breakdown, and that's why all these people look so stupid, right? It's one idiot begets another idiot, and if you put all the idiots in one pile, they're going to have a mass, that thing that what was the thing that got so heavily criticized last spring? Mass psychosis, right? Mass psychosis. That was what everyone was talking about. Well, here's the thing. Mass psychosis is the operating system. That's how we work, right? It wasn't news, right? It wasn't news. It made the rounds explaining what's going on with COVID. The trouble is, it existed before, and it exists all the time. And so this mass formation psychosis, right? This mass formation psychosis thing is a big part of it. So Muslim Bitcoiner says, it's both. It's clown world conspiracy where they know they are dumb but continue to conspire. Yeah, I'd say that's it. Yeah, it's both. Yeah. And Kevin Opar, mass formation psychosis. Yeah, you got it. I missed it. It was mass formation psychosis. So yeah, that is what we're dealing with here. And there's ways to break mass formation psychosis, and one of the best ways is taking shit away from people. And I think American lifestyle is about to get taken away in some ways by inflation and the cost of energy and all that. So we'll see what anger comes as a result, and we'll see what breaks, right? But we're Bitcoiners. We don't care. All right, team. Peace.